Been in a series called Bounce. Y'all say bounce. Bounce. It's been a fun series. It's been a faith-filled series, and my hope is that this series is strengthening you, but also that it's meeting you just right where you are. Today, we're going to look at the life of Peter once again. We've looked at the Apostle Paul. We've looked at the Apostle Peter, and today we're going to look right back at Peter's life. I'm talking about Peter the Rock. Because just like you and me, Peter the Rock had some rock bottom moments. Peter the Rock had some rock bottom moments. We probably, if you've lived long enough, have had a rock bottom moment. Maybe you're in one right now. That rock bottom moment for you may be relationally. It could be through an addiction. You just come to the rock bottom and you're the lowest you've ever been. Maybe it's a financial rock bottom. Maybe it's a business rock bottom. Maybe it's an emotional rock bottom where you're just emotionally spent. Rock bottom moments are important and necessary because it's in rock bottom moments that we get desperate. And it's in rock bottom moments where we sort of just throw up our hands and say, God, I can't. And God, I'm done. And God, I don't have anything to offer here. Sometimes we get ourselves at rock bottom moments, and sometimes rock bottom moments happen to us. But regardless of where you are in that rock bottom moment, through the life of Peter today, we're going to learn how to bounce. We're going to learn, as what Paul encouraged us in the first week of our series together, we're going to learn that even the hardest thing, the darkest things, God works all things. Y'all say all things. He works all things for the good. And pain will make you feel like your story's over. Rock bottom moments will make you feel like this is your life and that it's never going to change. But God wants you to know that it's not the end of your story. It's just a part of your story. Not the end, just a part. And a lot of times we want to like edit pain out of our story. We don't like to have pain. We don't like to have hurt and darkness and suffering as a part of our story, but it's a necessary part of our story. And if you are at a zero moment, your rock bottom moment, again, you might think that it's the end, but it's not. And the true purpose of who you are in God and for which God created you in is not for the rock bottom moment, but it's for the moment that you bounce back. And again, the tricky thing about pain and the tricky thing about suffering and hard times is it sort of puts blinders on our perspective. And we don't really think that it'll ever change. You ever had that kind of oppressive pain? Oppressive suffering, oppressive darkness, just a hard time where you're like, I can't imagine this ever getting any better. And let me just say this to someone here today, even to this point, if you think that in your life you have been a failure your entire life, that nothing has ever gone good for you. You grew up in a tough family. You never have a turnaround. You've never had an up moment in your life. You have just had one bad day or another. I want to rush to say that there's more to your story. And you're not created for the low time. You're created for the bounce back. And you're here today because God wants to give you perspective. He wants to help you see through the pain. And what I want you to hear on the front end of our talk together today is that your true identity is seen in the light of God and not in the darkness of your suffering or your pain, not in the darkness of your mistake, not in the darkness of something that's been done to you or something that you have done. Who you are in God is seen in the light of God, not in the darkness of your pain. And not in the darkness of your suffering, and not in the darkness of what's been done to you or something that you have done. I guess what I'm saying is don't let the darkness of a moment determine the brightness of your future. Don't let the darkness of a relational moment. It's just a moment. It's just a moment. And yes, some moments are longer than others, but I want to just encourage you today, and we're going to see it in the life of Peter. It's just a moment. This too shall pass. Was that song that we just sat and listened to, was it encouraging for someone today? Yeah. That it's just a moment, that this will pass, that you will get through this. One step, one foot in front of the other. How many know that sometimes you just got to live life that way? That the future's not clear, and you don't know what is a week from now. Heck, you don't even know what's an hour from now. What do you do in those kinds of moments? You just put one foot in front of the other. When you don't know what to do, you do what is next, and you do it faithfully. Yes. When you don't know what to do, you walk with God in the next step. You walk in His ways, but I don't know His will. Walk in His ways. One step. What is the way He wants you to walk in this emotional, dark moment? What's the way He wants you to walk in this time in your marriage? What's the way? What's the step He wants you to take in this job, in this business venture? What's the step He wants to take in reconciliation? What's the step He wants you to take towards healing? What's the step He wants you to take in getting a proper perspective? Take that step. One step in front of the other. But don't let the darkness of a moment, a downtime, determine or dictate the brightness of your future. I'm here to tell you today that God is the one who determines your destiny. Your life is in the hands of God. Bounce back. It gives us hope. Bounce backs give us the perspective that things will get better. And the true purpose for which you were created is not the dark moment, but the bounce back moment. And today I want you to just sit back and I want you to read, it's a pretty long section of Scripture found in John chapter 21. Jesus has died on the cross. He is resurrected. He's already appeared to the disciples. I think this is the third time that we're going to read. He's appeared to hundreds of others. And this is a pretty incredible moment. It's one that's familiar for some of you here today who are familiar with the New Testament. John chapter 21, we're going to read it. It's 17 verses, and then we're going to jump right into it. Y'all ready? If you're ready, say yeah. All right. After this, Jesus revealed Himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and He revealed Himself in this way. Simon, Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and two others of the disciples were together. That's a total of 7, by the way. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. Sounds like a good idea to me. And they said to him, we will go with you. And they went out, and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. And just as the day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish? And they answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And so they cast it, and they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. And the disciple that Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, it's the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for the work, and he threw himself into the sea. And the other disciples came to the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far off from the land, but about 100 yards off. And when they got out on the land, they saw a charcoal fire in place, and fish laid out on it and bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. And so Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. And now none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came, and he took the bread, and he gave it to them, and so with the fish. And this was now the third time that Jesus revealed to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Verse 15. And when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him, second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He said to them, tend to my sheep. And he said a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he had said it a third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything, and you know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Fishing is what Peter knew. When Peter hit a rock bottom moment, Peter went back to what he knew. And Peter is disappointed. He's disappointed in himself. He's disappointed in this whole situation that Jesus has died and in his perspective has left them. He's devastated. And so when he's devastated, when the rock has a rock bottom moment, he goes back to what is comfortable. He goes back to what he thought he was good at. And so they weren't fishing in Jerusalem. They had to walk away from Jerusalem, probably some 70 miles away. And more than likely, these men are fishing in the same place where Jesus first met Peter when he preached on the bow of Peter's boat. Do y'all remember that? Jesus asked Peter, can I use your boat for a moment? And then in that moment, he invited Peter and said, Peter, I'll make you now a fisher of men. This location is significant for that reason because it tells us that Peter went back to his old ways, old days, things that are familiar. In John 21:3, let's look at it again. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we're going to go with you. And they went out and they got into the boat. But that night, they caught nothing. Y'all say nothing. That's pretty much what happens when you go back to the old you. A bunch of nothing. But the old new is always tempting. The old you is kind of like that old worn out shirt you like to put on. Right? It's comfortable. It fits you just right. It just sort of lays across all the body parts just right. You know what I'm saying? Just sits right. It's just like comfy. It's just comfy. Anybody got a sweatshirt like that? Yeah, it just feels good. It's nasty, but it just feels good. And anytime we find ourselves in a low place, the temptation will always be to go back to what's comfortable, even though we know it's nasty. That's always going to be the temptation. Here's what you need to know. Those of you that are Christ followers, some of you are new in your faith walk with Jesus. Some of you have been walking with him for quite a while. Here's what you need to know. Your mind is still being saved. Your body, your old habits, you're being transformed. So you still have the same old appetites. And you'll still be plagued by the same old temptations. And the temptation is go get the sweatshirt. The temptation in the low moment, in the hard moment, in the disappointing moments. Anybody just have a long days where you're just like, I'm done. Like just emotionally spent days. I'm not saying anything necessarily happened. It was just a long day. Just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to talk to anyone. Just give me a glass of wine and a sweatshirt. You know, y'all, people have that kind of, you know what I'm saying, just the end of the day kind of feel. And it's in those moments that it's real dangerous when we're tired, when we're frustrated, when we're going through a hard time, because there's this real allure to going back to what's comfortable, going back to what's easy and what comes easy. I don't know about y'all, but the stuff I shouldn't be doing always comes easy. Y'all ever notice that? The stuff you should be doing always comes hard, and the stuff you shouldn't be doing, it comes easy. I can just slide right into that. It's like my mind knows what to do and how to think. My mouth knows what to say. My eyes know what to look at. Like I can just slide right back into that. It's comfortable. But you can't go back to the old if you're going to bounce into the new. I want you to hear that today. You can't go back to the old if you're going to bounce into the new. In the times of struggle, most of us like to go to the path of least resistance because you're struggling. You're struggling. And so you're like, I ain't got the strength. I had the strength yesterday, but I don't have the strength today. My give a crap is running really low right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't care today. We wake up that way sometimes, don't we? Hard times, dark times, pain, suffering, they can put us in that mode. And that's what Peter's doing here. In essence, Peter going back to fishing is Peter saying, I'm finished. Where's the sweatshirt? Like, I'm done with this. Like, I've disappointed God. I mean, he told me I was going to disappoint him. And I told him I wouldn't, and I did it 3 times. Not just once, but 3 times. And he's just done with himself. And he's just done with the whole situation. When you mess up, when you're in suffering, when you're in a hard place, when you're in pain, here's what it does. It lessens our confidence in ourselves, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But it can also lessen our confidence in Jesus. And the enemy will come and he'll tell you, just go back to what's comfortable. Sometimes he'll tell you because it's worth it, right? Come on, it's easy. You deserve it. Come on, just a little bit of reprieve. And if Jesus is Jesus, he'll forgive you anyway. Just slide back in to what is comfortable. And we believe those lies. I know there's been times in my life that I have. Hard times, difficult times, depressing times, dark times. And again, I'm not necessarily even talking about when something really bad happened. I'm just talking about times when you're just emotionally spent. And it's just easier to do what's old. And so then what do? Instead of bouncing back, we go back. And we go back to drinking. And we go back to unhealthy relationships. And we go back to destructive environments. And we go back to negative thinking. And we go back to cutting corners. And we go back to doing business the old way we used to do business. And here's what's crazy about us going back instead of bouncing back. We go back even though we know in going back, we're not going to be satisfied. Because we've already been on that road trip before. And we know where it leads, and we know it leaves us empty, right? Yep. It doesn't satisfy. As a matter of fact, I just got to get another hit to get back high. I just got to go do another thing and go experience another thing. And if the high was that good, you'd never ever have to come down. Right. But you know it's always rock bottom. Yep. And so we keep going back. And what's interesting to me is that Peter doesn't go at it alone. Peter says, I'm going fishing. And the boys goes, I'm going with you. Tells me that this group of guys were also discouraged, right? Yeah. You know, and I just know that misery loves company. Yeah. Come on, everybody loves ritual lament when you got somebody to lament with. Right. You know, or just stand on the boat and say nothing with. Those are good days on the boat, by the way. You know you're with your boy when you're on the boat and none of you say a thing and you have a great day on the water. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of day these men are having, you know. But they didn't go at it alone. And so they get to fishing. They go back to what they all know. They were in business together, many of them, the sons of Zebedee and, you know, Peter. They're in the business of fishing. They're going back to the old business. But at the end of the day, their nets are empty. This is where it always leads, and you know it. Go back to your old ways. Old ways equal empty days. Always. Come on, somebody. Old ways always lead to empty days. It's a cycle we all go through. I'm not going to do it, but dang, it looks good. And you get a little bit closer. Man, that sure would be easier. And you're a little bit closer. Whew, I'm tired. And you're a little bit closer. And then you're back to your old ways. And then you're broken. And you're like, I can't believe I did it. Said I wasn't going to do it. And here I am again. And what the devil says about me is true. I'm no good, right? Empty. days. Old ways, empty what? Empty days. They're empty days. But look what Jesus does here. I love this. In Peter's lowest moment, in his rock bottom moment, Jesus shows up. And isn't it just like Jesus to show up in the exact place, same place where he first showed up in Peter's life the first time? Just like Jesus. He just comes all the way back. It's like comes full circle. And we have this same relationship with God. We find ourselves in broken moments and desperate moments. And we're like, okay, God, I just want to experience your love and your purpose for my life. Please forgive me. And you feel restored. And you feel grace and mercy wash over you. And then a day passes, 2 days passes, 3 days, 4 days. I don't know how long it is for you. 4 weeks, a week, 10 minutes, whatever it may be. But it happens. But then we end up finding ourselves right back out on the boat again. Just right back out on the boat. And what does Jesus do? He shows up on the shoreline of your life. Every single time. Faithful friend. He's always there. As faithful as you are to sinning, he's faithful to forgiving. As consistent as you are to keep going back to the old ways, he's consistent to show you my way's better. He's going to keep coming back. He's going to keep coming back. And he does this. Look in verse 4. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was him. And Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish? And they answered him, no. We lose the translation of what Jesus was saying here through this translation. This is the ESV version. And even the NIV version doesn't pick up the way Jesus said it. Essentially, here's what Jesus said when he said, children, do you have any fish? What he's saying is, you're fishing again? How's that going for you? That's what he's saying in this moment. Hey, how's that working for you? Fishing, you boys, you're fishing again. Really? How's it working for you? Caught any fish today? No. Been out all night. We're coming in. We're frustrated. Verse 6, and he said to them, hey, whoa, before you come in, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. And so they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. I don't know how this hit the disciples, but as a fisherman myself, I have a pretty good idea. When Jesus said, hey, cast the net on the right side, they were like, shut up. We've been here all night long. We fished in the right conditions. We don't even know who you are, by the way. Mr. Just trying to critique what we do from the shoreline while we've been out battling the elements and doing what we do. Who do you think you are? But when you ain't caught nothing, you'll try anything. Come on, anybody ever been there? And you got to kind of push away from the excuses, and fishermen have great excuses. I use them all. Moon phase wasn't right. Temperature's not right. Pressure's too low. The water clarity wasn't great. There was too much wind. There wasn't enough wind. There was too little wind. It's like we got all these excuses, and yet here they are, and they got nothing. And any fisherman, if he's coming in after fishing for nothing, and there's a little pro tip, like, hey, right over there, they're right back into that. And so that's what they do. They go right back. They go right back in, and they cast it to the right. And maybe you're in a low moment today, and maybe you find yourself with empty nets and empty days. And Jesus says to you, I know exactly what it is that you're looking for, and I know you're empty. How's it going for you? You see, Jesus is wanting to have an honest conversation with you today. Just a dialogue in your mind and in your heart. Listen, how is it going for you? It's one that only you can answer. Maybe someone close could answer for you. They could look at you and go, it's going miserable for you. If you haven't figured it out just yet, girlfriend, going back to him is not good for you. And jumping from bed to bed, not good. It's going to end up in empty days again. And turning to the bottle, hey, listen, not good. What are you doing? And leaning towards that unhealthy relationship. Hey, your mind is in a negative place right now, not good. How's it going for you? Jesus is literally asking you, how is it doing your way going for you? And then he rushes to say, I know where the fish are. What you're looking for, I know where it is. What you're looking for, I can provide. You need approval, I got it. You need security, I got it. You need love, I got it. You need purpose, listen, I got it. You need healing, I got it. You need someone that comes close in your shame, I got it. You need light in your darkness, I got it. Just throw your nets to the right. I love this about our God. He's a ready supply, an endless source of grace. Grace on tap. A tap that never blows. You can go back to it time after time after time. Are you coming up empty? Empty-handed? Jesus says to them, hey, cast one more time. And this is what I want to lean in on. Your coming back requires you to cast again. You know what they were doing towards the end of the day? They were mending their nets. They were cleaning it up. This is like those of you that are getting off the boat after a long day, on the boat. And you got food everywhere and surfboards everywhere and towels everywhere. And like you pull in to your slip and everything's pristine and it's cleaned up. That's where these guys are. They're picked up. They're buttoned up. Nets are mended, cleaned up. And Jesus says, cast again. This is a frustrating moment. This requires a little bit of effort on your part. But it requires tremendous trust. What do you have to lose? That's my question. You're empty-handed anyway. Some of you are ready to give up in an area of your life. And Jesus is asking you today, keep casting. What you want, I got. What you need, I got. But this is what it requires. It requires tremendous trust. Okay, these guys were seasoned fishermen. They knew what they were doing. And so they had to go counter to their own logic. Counter to what they knew. They're like, bro, we fished every spot. And some of you need to quit being so self-dependent because it leads to being self-destructive. Empty nets, empty nets, empty nets, empty nets. And Jesus says, hey, you just need to cast one more time and do it the way I said do it. He said throw it to the right. They didn't throw it to the left. And just as saying to you, trust me in your marriage. Don't do it your way. Do it my way. Hey, walk in integrity in that business still. Don't do it your way. Do it my way. Hey, you keep being faithful in raising your kids. Don't bend into their pressure on you. You're the parents. Come on. Come on, you keep loving them and leading them. They ain't got no option whether they're coming to church. They're coming to church. They're going to come to the house of God. Don't give in to, but my friends and nobody but. No, you do it. He says throw it to the right. Don't throw it to the left. Throw it to the right. One step. His way, not my way. It takes tremendous amount of trust to do it His way, and that's where some of us are today. It's just a trust thing. I know you think you know. And there was a way that you used to do it that you thought worked for you, and it's so enticing to go back to it because that way, you got some muscle memory that old way, don't you? Just some muscle memory. Like, I know how to do that. I know how to talk that way. I know how to dress that person down that way. I know how to get my way. I know how to manipulate the situation. Oh, yeah, I know my way. And Jesus says, no, to the right. To the right, to the right. To the right. To the right. And I want you to think about what Jesus is saying to Peter by showing up on the shoreline. Get this. Peter's there, empty nets, disappointed, mad at himself, in a bad place. And by Jesus showing up, here's what he's saying to Peter. Peter, you are not dependable, but I am. And Peter, I can't trust you, but you can trust me. And Peter, good chance that you're going to fail me again, but guess what? I'm never going to fail you. I'm going to keep showing up. And here's what I think really God was wanting to push into Peter, because Peter goes on to be a very powerful player in the kingdom of God as he establishes and helps establish the New Testament church throughout the world. He needed Peter to know, Peter, saving the world is not dependent on you. It's dependent on me. Okay? Not you, but me. And someone needs to be set free in that today. It's not dependent on you. It's dependent on him. And we have the Bible, and we know how this story ends. I love how John 15 puts it. It says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. But apart from me, you can do what? Nothing. Not a dang thing. Nothing. Empty nets. Apart from me, you go back to your old ways and you come up empty. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Big goose egg. But he says, but if you will abide in me, if you'll walk with me, learn the rhythms of grace with me, you will bear fruit. And it will bring you love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Who needs some of that? But it requires abiding. It requires trusting. So here's the invitation. Listen to me. Come back to your comeback. That's Jesus' invitation today. Come back to your comeback. I love how this story ends because Jesus invites them to the shore. And you know the first thing that he does with them? He says, boys, you want some breakfast? That's my kind of God. Boys, do you want some breakfast? Jesus finds them in their brokenness and in their disappointment, and Jesus serves them in their emptiness. Jesus finds you today in your brokenness. Jesus finds you today. He brought you here. I know you got up, and I know you got dressed, and I know you got in a car, and I know you made it here, but God brought you here. This is Jesus' way of showing up on the shoreline of your life. And he finds you in your brokenness, and here it is, listen to me. He serves you even though you got empty nets. And in your emptiness, you got nothing in this moment to offer, and he says, how about breakfast? Come on, biscuits and gravy, somebody. How about breakfast? How about breakfast? How's fishing and coming up empty? How's being self-dependent working for you? How's being disappointed in yourself working for you? How is feeling like you'll never measure up as the mom? How's it working for you? How is the scale you're measuring yourself and everyone else by? How is it working for you? How is being mad at God and trying to ignore him? How is it working for you? How is walking afraid working for you? How is walking ashamed working for you? How is walking with a tremendous amount of condemnation working for you? How is shutting yourself off emotionally from the rest of the world working for you? And when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." And he said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Tend my sheep." And he said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because of what he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Listen to me. Grace is more powerful than consequences. And you may be sitting in some consequences of going back to your old ways. There may be some brokenness. Grace covers it. Right. Grace is more powerful. And you may have to sit in your consequences. You may just have to sit in it for a while. And let me rush to say that pain's not punishment. Consequences are consequences. But God is faithful, and He loves you. And I love this. It's comfort and provision before let's work on the problems. Isn't that gracious of God? Hey, you want some breakfast? Come here, sister. Come here, come here, come here, come here. I love you. And that man, he can't give you what I can give you. And no man ever will be able to. And come here, fella. Come here, buddy. That drink, there's comfort before correction. There's compassion. There's breakfast before rebuke. And that's how we're wrapping this up. How about some breakfast? How good is our God? Comfort, compassion, and they eat, and they get their fill. But then Jesus pushes in 3 times into Peter. Now it's uncomfortable. He feeds him first. That's smart. Get that belly full. Feeds him first. Gets that trust. Hey, we're good, buddy. We're good. We just ate. We're good. We're good. Were you good? I'm good. We're good. Do you love me? No, Peter, do you love me? Peter, come on, man. Do you love me? And then this is the moment where Peter has his bounce back. Because he's finally at the end of himself. And he says, "Jesus, you know everything. You know I love you." And what is when what is true about you is what God knows to be true about you, and you know to be true about you, that's a good place to be. That's the bounce. I know who I am despite of my circumstances. I know who I am in spite of my failures. I know who I am in spite of my darkness. I know who I am despite the pain. I know who I am despite the mistakes, despite the failures. I know who I am. I love God. I'm a child of God. God loves me. Why don't you bow your heads and close your eyes?